And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. This is our 83rd episode, recorded on Wednesday, November the 15th. I'm your host, Jeff Marlow, along with my co-host, Kathy Amos. And as usual, we'll start this show with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And Kathy, I'm going to kind of go back to yesterday. The Hoosier Connect and Hoosiers for Good collectives band kind of worked together to raise NIL money. It was known as In for Indiana Day. And they did a great job yesterday of making some of the athletes available for on like some YouTube videos. I know we happened to see Jared and Galen talking with Mackenzie Holmes and Sydney Parrish and also Coach Morin, as well as I think they also had Miller Kopp on in the segment I watched. I know that had some clips from Cody Zeller, Victor Oladipo, and others who were all part of it. But they overall, and we'll get to the number here in a little bit, but their goal was to try and raise as much money as possible for the NIL collectives. And they also had somebody who was going to give a matching donation dollar for dollar up to $1 million. So anything that was raised yesterday was doubled. And with that, so good job and great effort by all the fans out there. And I'm going to go with that as our banner moment, the Hoosiers Connect and Hoosiers for Good collective drive yesterday in for Indiana. And I would imagine if you go to their websites, you probably can still even maybe make some donations and get those added into the collective. So our banner moment is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, presenting sponsor of the Back Home Network, who includes the Assembly Call and Crimson Cast. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for schools in their existing line. You're bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that just loves great collegiate gear. They're constantly releasing, as we said, that new merchandise. Lately, it's been the bomber jackets. Really some neat stuff there. Not only do you get quality apparel, but you're supporting an Indiana-based business that has its roots in the Kelly School of Business. Go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME23. That's HOME23 for 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. And again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, so we're going to throw it over to Kathy, and we'll get her take, and let's hear what she's got on her mind as we hit episode number 83 here tonight.
Yeah, Jeff, I love your Hoosier Proud banner moment. I think that was the proud moment for us. And like you said, when we get to the news headline, we'll talk about how much money they raised. But there were some really sizable donations. I was kind of interested in the whole Hoosier for Good project that they had going on yesterday, the day of giving yesterday. And so I actually kept the website up on my screen while I was working, and I'd hit refresh and kind of see. But there were some really, really large donations. I was really impressed. I even saw one person for $100,000. And so, and then some as small as $5. And so, I think that is a good thing to highlight because it's for all different sports. It's not just men's basketball or football, but it's really towards all of our different sports that we have, which I think it's important for us to be able to support all of those. And I think it's great for people that, we're willing to give, even if it's as little as $5, that it all adds up, which we'll get into that amount here in a minute. So I think that your banner moment was absolutely spot on. So I'm really excited about that. Really excited about the basketball season starting, even though, we didn't have the result we wanted to on Sunday against Stanford. I think that, listening to Coach Morin's show that she had with Austin on Monday, the team is really taking it to heart and internalizing it and already diving into the film and really learning from it, which was what we really, I think, need to take away from Sunday as well. And I think we'll see some good results here that we'll talk about with the upcoming two teams on Friday and Sunday. So I'm just happy to be back talking basketball and having live hoops to talk again.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think there's a lot of things that could be learned. I don't want to feel like they were taking anything lightly, but I think just realizing that, when you're playing a caliber opponent that Stanford is, that you've got to bring your A game right from the get-go. So I'm sure they've had several talks over the last couple of days about getting off to good starts against all teams, but especially those better opponents. Let's go on with some news here and get your thoughts also a little bit on this, Kathy. Mackenzie Holmes has been named to the Wooden Award preseason top 50 watch list. That was just announced, I believe, early yesterday or late Monday. And then yesterday, as we mentioned, Hoosiers Connect had their In for Indiana campaign along with Hoosiers for Good to help raise NIL funds for IU athletes. Last I saw, Kathy, you might have an updated number on this, but the last I saw, they had raised, with that matching donation, $985,140. That was the last number I saw.
Yeah, that was the last number I saw as well. So just fantastic. I think their goal was 1 million, so just missed it. But, again, there were so many donations of different sizes out there. It was really, really fun to see all the Hoosiers out there supporting our NIL.
Yeah. And then finally, the polls came out earlier this week. IU dropped to 18th in the AP poll, 17th in the coaches poll following the loss to Stanford. I really wasn't shocked, Kathy, that they dropped into the late teens there. I thought that was actually a fair rating based on how they had played out at Stanford.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't surprised at that either. We had quite a bit of shifting. Really, if you look at all of the rankings, in the top 10, we had already talked about prior to us losing on Sunday, we already had Ohio State and LSU losing as well. And, of course, I think both of those dropped out the top 10. We had South Carolina take over the number 1 spot, having beat Notre Dame quite handily. And then we had Iowa moving into that number 2 spot after they beat Virginia Tech. So a lot of movement and a lot of fun parity. I think the basketball season for women's basketball is just going to be even more up and down this year than we have been starting to see. And that's really actually kind of fun to see. You get a lot more competitive basketball. You don't just walk in and have these, most of the time really one-sided wins one way or another. So I think it's really overall good for the sport.
Yeah, and then what I think last night I saw Utah lost as well, and then also not only did South Carolina run Notre Dame pretty much out of the gym, they ran Maryland out of the gym over the weekend as well. And so I saw UConn lost over the weekend to an unranked North Carolina State team. So like you said, Kathy, a lot of parity right now.
An interesting thing with the LSU game, I think it was last night, that my husband was telling me before we started here that even though they won, Angel Reese got benched. She didn't play at all in the second half. Coach's decision. So, I think she kind of got called out after that loss that they had. Kim McCulkey didn't say her by name, but she definitely was alluding to, needing more leadership from her returning veteran players and whatnot. And she ended up pulling her and benching her for the entire second half of that game that they had last night. So just some really interesting headlines and fascinating storylines, I think, going on this year.
Yeah, I think and as we get some more of these non-conference games, I think we'll see some more of that. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on as we go throughout the last part of November into the middle of December. A lot of leagues are going to play conference games at first, like the Big Ten.
Yep.
Going to play there. Oh, this is the other thing I didn't put in the news, Kathy. I want to kind of get your thought. There was a report yesterday that the Big Ten is trying to finalize their conference schedules going forward. This was more on the men's side, where the men play 20 games compared to the women's 18. But with the West Coast schools coming in, whether they should leave it at 20 or move it to 21 or even possibly 22 conference games. And I know it's on the men's side, but that if the men move, you got a feeling the women are going to, they're not going to stay at 18. I just can't imagine. So it'll be interesting to see how that conference schedule shakes out a little bit next year. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do. And I think, just like on the men's side, if they up the women's game to 20 from the 18 that we have now, that just means 2 of your non-conference games go off the schedule. So I would imagine that we would take some of the maybe lower opponents off of the schedule as opposed to, some of the marquee games. Like I don't see a Stanford going away or the Tennessee upcoming games, or if we were able to travel to the Bahamas again, things like that probably won't come off. So I'm guessing maybe some of those mid-major games come off of there. Is that kind of your thought as well?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be kind of the key. But you're also going to have a balance there. You don't want to totally upload your load up your schedule, because the Big Ten is not going to be easier. You're going to bring in a pretty solid a pretty solid Oregon team, and right now what are top 20 teams in UCLA and USC. So, you're going to go there. I think it would be more interesting, Kat. I'll be interested to see how they kind of work out the travel. Well, like when we were in school, I'm a few years older than you, but we're roughly the same age. Back then, on the men's side, especially, you used to have travel partners. If you went to Illinois one weekend, you were probably going to go to Northwestern on the next game. You played Thursday in Illinois and Saturday at Northwestern, or vice versa. If you went to Michigan, you played Michigan State in a weekend and came back. And they kind of got away from that years ago, but I'll be interested to see if they do something with that with the West Coast swings, because I can't imagine budget. I know they're getting a ton of TV money, but you would think, okay, you're going to go out west. Let's have you play a Washington, a UCLA on the same swing. Don't go play UCLA, fly back to play Ohio State at home on Sunday. To me, that'll be interesting to see how they kind of group that scheduling like that for their West Coast trips. And I know with some of the non-revenue sports, they've been talking about that kind of thing with how to do kind of West Coast, Midwest swings, West Coast, East Coast swings, however you want to talk about it. What do you think about that idea? Some kind of travel partner like that?
Yeah, I mean, it, to me, logistically, it just makes a lot of sense. Yeah, to your point, I don't think you're going to fly out to California and then turn around and fly over to Penn State and play, 2 or 3 days later. It's just going to be too hard on the players too. I mean, there is the time zone difference as well, not to mention the long travel and in addition to the expense. So I would be shocked if they don't pair a lot of those games together so that they're, kind of back to back, kind of like maybe this last weekend we played Stanford on Sunday, and then maybe they just stay out in California and play another game, somewhere out there. It's kind of what you're thinking out in the West Coast. Yeah, that to me makes the most sense. So it'll be interesting to see how it starts rolling out for next year.
And by the way, I will go back real quick to the Hoosiers Connect thing, the NIL initiative, the In for Indiana. You can find some of those interviews on YouTube. So if you just go to YouTube and search Hoosiers Connect In for Indiana, which I think you'll find it pretty quickly. Like I said, I watched the one with Jared and Galen and Austin Render with Coach Morin, and then she left, and then Sydney Parrish and Mackenzie were on together. So it was kind of an interesting watch, because you get a little bit of insight to the kids and some of their experience with NIL. And again, kudos to Jared and Austin and Galen for conducting those interviews. I thought they did a great job. So, hey, let's talk about Murray State real quick. How about that?
Yes, let's do.
All right, so I'll do kind of the preview, and I'll let you get into some of the players a little bit. All right.
Okay.
Murray State, Indiana's opponent on Friday. That game will be on Big Ten Plus. It will start at 7 Eastern, 6 Central. And Kathy, I'm actually going to get to go. I'm going to actually cover the game for the Back Home Network and help Ari out. Ari's actually going to be over at the volleyball game, and so I'm going to be able to help Ari out and help cover the game a little bit. So I'm looking forward to that. With that, so again, that tip time is 7 Eastern, 6 Central, and will air on Big Ten Plus. IU is 2-0 all time against Murray State. The last time they played was 2012 as part of the 2012-2013 season. IU won on the road at Murray 63-62. They're coached by Rochelle Turner in her 7th season at Murray State, 91-89 overall. They were 15-16 last year, 7-13 in the Missouri Valley. She played at Missouri State, former player from 1991 to 1994. And then she spent 21 years as a high school coach in Murray, Kentucky, where she went 460 and 178. So she's got a good pedigree. So I think it's just a matter of time getting it built back up. So, and as of today, they're 1-1 with a loss to Arkansas and a victory over Cumberland, an NAIA team. And their next game isn't until Friday when they play us.
Yep. So from a player perspective, they do have Ava Learn. She's a 6'1" junior guard or forward. She's actually a transfer from Purdue. So transferring over there from Purdue, and in their so very short season so far with their 2 games, she is averaging 15.5 points per game and 7.5 rebounds per game. Additionally, they have Caitlin Young. She is also 6'1". She is a senior forward that is playing for them. So one of their more experienced players. In their first couple of games, for her career, she has averaged 18.6 points per game. Last year is 21 points per game. And she also throws in 8.4 rebounds for her career, or 7.8 last year. She's pretty good shooting in terms of field goal percentage for her career. She has shot 53% field goal percentage, 36% from three and 86% from the free throw line. For last year, she was the All Missouri Valley Conference on the my goodness, I can't talk tonight. She's on the All Missouri MVC team last year, and she led the MVC in scoring, and she was actually 10th in the nation in scoring. She's in 21 and 22, she was the MVC player of the year and led the conference in scoring and rebounding as well. Additionally, they have Zoe Stewart, who is a 5'10" redshirt freshman guard. She has scored 11.5 points per game and 2 rebounds per game in their first couple of games. And then from last year, they have Hannah McKay, who's a 6-foot senior forward. She averaged 10.4 points per game last year. She's only around 6 points per game this year, but I wonder if her role has changed or if it's just been early in the season and maybe this first couple of games weren't maybe a good matchup. But she's another one I think we probably should keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I also point out that Zoe Stewart, a Terre Haute North high school grad. She made her way down to Murray State from Terre Haute North. She redshirted last year, but she looks like she was a pretty big time scorer at Terre Haute North. As well. So but I really am interested in Caitlin Young. I think to me, that's going to be a matchup you see with Mackenzie. And it's been and traditionally the type of matchup that Mac has really thrived against. And I got a feeling Friday night, Mac's going to want to come out and show that performance at Stanford was the anomaly. It was the exception. Yeah. Not the rule. But Caitlin Young, as you said, all Missouri Valley last year. 2 years ago, they were still in the Ohio Valley Conference, and she was the player of the year in that league 2 years ago. So she's a solid player. And that's the one reason I was really kind of worried about her is, she's got some experience. She's not going to be afraid. Now, she may not play well, but she's not going to walk into Assembly Hall with fear. She's been around for a while and played some good teams. So, but I think you're right about McKay a little bit. And even Young's numbers in the first couple games are down a little bit from her career. But I think that's also because you take in Ava Learn now coming in from Purdue, who is taking more of an offensive role, which is maybe distributing the roles a little bit. So I thought an excellent point there about that. So with that, any other thoughts about Murray State, Kathy, other than I think they'll be a solid team as they go through the year, but to me, this is a game Indiana should be able to win.
We definitely should be able to win. I think our women are going to come out with a chip on their shoulders for sure. The interesting thing I think is just the ties that you talked about, right? We have Zoe Stewart from Terre Haute. We have Caitlin Young, who is coming in as a senior. And then, you got Ava Learn, the Purdue transfer. So I'll be just kind of curious if they come in and just have something that they feel like they're wanting to kind of prove against Indiana as well. So I just hopefully, our women are kind of ready for that, because we saw that with Army, right, on the men's side, where we had a team that came in and really weren't afraid of the moment, and they felt like they really had a point to prove. And I can see Murray State being somewhere in that same line too. But at the end of the day, I feel like hopefully this will be another game where we see a lot of our bench in that second half, especially.
Yeah, and let's talk about Lipscomb real quick, because, again, this is going to be interesting about this is now you're going to kind of get into that mold of playing a couple days after another game. So you're going to play Friday, turn around and play Sunday against Lipscomb. That game will be at 2:00 Eastern on Sunday, 1 p.m. Central on Big Ten Plus again. It's the first ever meeting against Lipscomb, which, for those of you who don't know, Lipscomb is located in Nashville, Tennessee. They are 2-1 with victories over Evansville and Morehead State and a loss to Fairfield. And then they actually play on Friday as well. They're going to play Tennessee State on Friday. Their head coach is Lauren Sumsky, her 5th season at Lipscomb, where she has a 49-65 record. She's young though, Kathy. I think it says she's 27 years old. She's got to be one of the youngest head coaches in Division I.
And it's her 5th season, huh?
Yeah. She got hired at like 23, 23 or something like that, because she actually spent a couple years at D3 Rhodes College where she played. But they were 20-12 in the A-Sun last year, 13-5 in the league, or excuse me, they were 20-12 playing in the A-Sun. They were 13-5 in the league. So this is a team that they believe they've got a chance to make some real noise come in the A-Sun conference season and into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. So other fun fact with Lipscomb, that's who our soccer team plays for the first round of the NCAA. So we got a couple of Lipscomb matchups, but back to basketball. So in terms of players, they have Bella Vinson. She is a 6'2" junior. She's a guard or a forward, however, somewhere in between there. She has averaged 10.7 points per game, just under 4 rebounds per game and assists per game in her career. She shoots 36% from 3 and 78% from free throw line. She was on the All ASUN conference team in 22 and 23. And then as a freshman, she was on the All-Sun ASUN freshman team as well. Additionally, they have Aaliyah Sorrento. She is a 6'2" junior forward. She spent 1 year at Ole Miss. So far this year, she is averaging 12.6 points per game and 8.4 rebounds. And then finally, the last person we should hear a name of and keep an eye on is Clara McGowan. She's a 5'7" junior guard. She spent, ironically, 1 year at Murray State. So transferring over then to Lipscomb from Murray State. She is averaging 10.4 points per game in the early going of this season and 4 rebounds per game, and is shooting 36% from 3-point land. So that is a highlight of Lipscomb.
Yeah. And again, I think this is one of those where based on just our talent, they graduated their best player. I can't remember her name, but I remember looking at the stats from last year and realizing she wasn't on their roster this year. And she graduated. She was an all league type player as well. So not quite a rebuild, but I think they're maybe still searching for who they want to be their go-to person. But it's another one. I feel like, this is one of those where we come in focused, come in ready to play, that it really should just be a good solid win for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, I think it was Jalen Holcomb. Is that I believe who they graduated? Yeah, so
good call.
She was averaging. So last year she averaged 12.6 points per game for them. She was right behind Bella Vinson in scoring. So that's probably a big hole they're trying to fill. I'm guessing with Aaliyah Sorrento and Clara McGowan, their 2 transfers.
Yeah. So, but again, I just think this is one of those, we don't know much about Lipscomb. Excuse me. I'm going to try talking tonight too. Again, just another game I think we should be in pretty good shape with. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I don't see a whole lot of, again, big size, on their roster. They do have, again, Aaliyah Sorrento is 6'2". So I'd expect that's probably going to be the matchup. Either, I guess Bella Vinson is too, but I'm thinking probably Aaliyah Sorrento. But I would be surprised again right now with the talents that they would be able to match up very well with Indiana. And again, coming off of that loss, I would expect that our women are really going to be wanting to prove something in both of these games. I heard Coach Morin on her radio show were using words like they were embarrassed by their play and, all around. And so I think that, this is a veteran IU team. And I think that they're going to bounce back from that and really show it on the floor in these 2 games.
Real quick, back to the Murray State game, because that'll be the first game they play coming off this loss. And I didn't have this in the run sheet, Kathy, so I kind of just thought of this off the top of my head. So forgive me for putting this on you. But what's maybe one thing you're looking for in that Murray State game on Friday night?
For me personally, what I'm going to be really looking for out of the beginning, and really in both of these games, is that they're locked in on defense from the beginning. We saw in Stanford, I don't think they ever really got locked in on defense. But if you even go back to the Eastern Illinois game, I felt that first 5 minutes, they weren't quite, locked in on defense then either. And I think that's something, that Coach Moore has talked about again in her weekly radio shows a couple of times now is defense, right? And that's always what Coach Moore and team has been hanging their hat on is defense. And it just seems like we've kind of slipped a little bit this year. So to me, I'm going to be really watching more the defensive end in both of these games.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of watch early on to see what they're doing offensively. I thought we settled for some shots on Sunday against Stanford a little early. I didn't think they were terrible shots, but I thought we could have got that same shot 5-6 seconds later in the shot clock than we did. But I also want to see if maybe we try to pound it inside to Mac a little bit early, see if we can establish get her going. So that's really those to me, they I know it's not like 2 things, but that's to me is the same thing. What are we looking for on offense? And I agree with you about the defense, but I also want to see us I kind of want to be hopeful that we'll use that defense that you talked about to maybe spur some of the offense, maybe
transition.
get the transition game going. And then another thing, Kathy, I think you and I have talked about this a lot. We talked a little bit about it on Sunday coming out of that game. Can we get back to playing 8 or 9, maybe even 10 people? Because we really only played about 6, 7 people. I think Lene finally got up to 11 minutes of game time on Sunday. But for the most part, it was the starting 5 and Lexi for the bulk of the game. And again, I just think we got to find a way to get into 7, 8, 9, 8 and 9 on a consistent basis.
Right. Yeah. I think the last thing I'll be watching for, so defense is my number one. My other thing is rebounding. I feel like we've not been rebounding real well either as a team in either of our games. Like I know we out rebounded Eastern Illinois, but I just really want to see that we can put some team rebounding together and really have our guards go in there and help us out and do a little better job on the boards.
Yeah, I guess I think we're going to see I believe we'll see a very focused team come Friday at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. So anything else you want to add about these two teams?
No, I don't think so. Hopefully it becomes a non-event for us to talk about when we do our next show on Sunday.
Yep. So we'll talk about what's coming up next here after a little music. And as Kathy mentioned, our next episode will be Sunday, November 19th. That's going to be at 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 Central. It won't be a immediate post-game show on Sunday. We will not have a show after the game on Friday. As I mentioned, I'm going to be actually attending the game, and then we'll just do a kind of a combined Murray State and Lipscomb post-game show on Sunday at 6 Eastern, 5 Central. So join us then. The men are also playing that day. So we're trying to make sure we give enough buffer zone in there for Assembly Calls post-game radio show as well. And then we'll come on a little bit later. We hope you all will join us. Assembly Call will be on tomorrow night following the Wright State game. So I can't tell you exactly what time, but their post-game show will be tomorrow night when they after the Wright State game. And I think that's Kathy's probably looking it up right now, but I want to say that is that a 7?
We play 7 Eastern, 6 Central tip time for the game, the men's game tomorrow night. Yep.
So approximately 9 p.m. Central time or Eastern time, 8 p.m. Eastern. I cannot talk. 9 p.m. Eastern time, 8 p.m. Central time for that post-game show with Jared and the crew over at Assembly Call for their post-game show. Kathy, before we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts on what since we talked on Sunday? Got any final thoughts that you want to mention to their fans tonight?
No, I don't think so. Just again, another thank you for all the people that gave to the Hoosier for Good collective yesterday, and everyone out there supporting us as well. And yeah, I guess I do have one other thought on Stanford. I don't get on Twitter a whole lot anymore, but I did go out just a little bit just to see what kind of comments were coming after the Stanford game, right? Because I think on the men's side, we would have just seen Twitter blowing up with all kinds of negative comments, right? I did not see that on the women's side. Now, again, maybe there were some that came later after I looked, but of the, couple dozen, 20 or so that I read, they were all actually really positive and encouraging. And I hope we see that in our crowd still showing up here for the game on Friday and Sunday as well. So I was really quite impressed with our fan base, with the reaction that at least the little bit I could see out on public social media, where they're like, hey, this happens, you'll bounce back, you'll go get them next time. For the most part, I didn't see hardly any really super negative comments out there. So just really proud of our fan base for doing that as well.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And I think they've bought a little bit of goodwill with the fan base with the way they've played over the last few years. Whereas talking about the men, they're winning, not easily, but they're winning, and there's meltdown happening on Twitter. So
exactly.
Or X, I should call it X, to be official. But yeah, I think that is a really good point, Kathy. And again, for those of you who missed it yesterday, that interview with Sydney Parrish and Coach Moore, Coach Moore on her own, and then Sydney Parrish and McKenzie, they talk a little bit about the battle with social media, a little bit about the fact that, kids are going to be on it. They all have their Instagram. They all have their, their X, their things they do, TikTok, but about how you try to control what you're putting out, what you're seeing. and trying not to let it be negative impact. Because even Coach Morton said it can have positive impact too, but it also how you try and keep it from having negative impact. So again, if you guys get an opportunity, go onto YouTube and search for that. Again, I think Hoosiers Connect or In for Indiana, you should be able to find it pretty easily. It was a nice about half hour, 45-minute interview with those three combined. So, but I thought that was a really good point. And Kathy, you brought, and I appreciate you bringing up that point about our fan base on the women's side here, that they weren't having a meltdown on Sunday. So,
yeah. So I think you can find it out on the Back Home Network YouTube channel too.
Yeah, that's true. I think you can. I think it is now posted.
Yep.
So, and speaking of which, if you want to see us do the show live and be a part of the live chat, the Workaholics, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And that's youtube.com/@BackHomeNetwork. That's relatively new over the last couple of weeks. So again, youtube.com/@BackHomeNetwork is where you can find our videos on YouTube. You can be a part of our private community as well. Again, this is relatively new. Find out more at assemblycall.substack.com. And again, bear with us a little bit. We're all trying to get used. Kathy and I have had some of the same issues. Saw something again today about trying to navigate Substack. It is new for us. We're all trying to kind of figure it out as we go along. So please bear with us, but you can find all the Assembly Call there, all the Assembly Call news, doing the work, Crimson Cast, that kind of Crimson Cast and that stuff at assemblycall.substack.com. Also, don't forget, with Kathy and I are trying to be a little more active in our Discord community. If you want on game days, I will have a hard time on Friday, but on Sunday, I'll try to. Okay, Kathy will have it on Friday. I'll try to be a little more active on Sunday with the Discord, as or kind of our live game chat, and then with that. So special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our logos. And a big thank you to Bob Thompson for our music that you heard throughout the broadcast. And thank you guys for listening wherever you are, whether you're watching us live on YouTube or you're getting us from your favorite podcast feed. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you soon. That'll be Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central. And until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
All right.
Hey, we're getting good at this. It's like the third show in a row we've kept right to about half an hour.
Look at us go. We should hurry and end it before we get too long. So,
of course, the first time there's a big game that's a close game, we're going to have to go way past that. So
we will. I know.
Hey,
yes.
No, I was going to say, I was watching a little bit. You're talking about Iowa moving up to number 2. I only got to see a bit and piece of it, but I thought Northern Iowa might give them a little better game, and they really took care of Northern Iowa pretty well.
I didn't get to watch any of that game. I can't remember what I had going on, but I saw the score every once in a while, and that was about it. I didn't see any of it, so I have no comments on it. So.
I will say this right now, at least for the few teams in the Big Ten who have played prominent opponents in the non-conference schedule. The Big Ten's not faring great. The Maryland lost, IU lost, Ohio State lost. So outside of Iowa,
Iowa has looked really good too.
Yes, they have.
I watched them against Virginia Tech, they looked really good. Yeah, we didn't really talk about that Virginia Tech game, but an interesting, another first for women's basketball. They had that game in Charlotte, North Carolina. And evidently there was a business owner that had seen Caitlin Clark and Iowa play in the Final Four and championship game last year and saw how much attention they drew and how the attendance was and everything. And there was a business person that said, you know what, I want to bring Iowa into Charlotte and get a marquee matchup. And that's how that Virginia Tech Iowa came about. And both of those schools got paid $150,000 each too. So to come and play. And I thought that was really an interesting thing to hear and learn. So
I think you're going to see more. I think you're going to see more and more of that in the women's game going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had a game in Paris this year and that one. So I think it's just really cool. Some of the things we're starting to see.
So Kathy, appreciate being here tonight with you.
Yes. We'll talk Sunday. Have fun Friday night.
I will. We'll talk to you on Sunday. Until then, you have a great rest of your week.
You too. All right.
Bye, everybody. Everyone.